Every morning at exactly 6:12 a.m., he was there, standing on the same worn tile of the platform, a man of few movements, fewer words. His presence was as consistent as the sound of the arriving train, predictable, unnoticed, almost part of the station itself. No one greeted him, no one stared, and perhaps that was the first clue. He wore the same grey coat every day, carried the same dark leather briefcase, took the same seat, third window from the left. To the passengers, he was just another commuter lost in routine. To the conductor, he was barely a nod of acknowledgement. But for reasons no one can now explain, that Thursday morning, he didn't show up. At first, it was dismissed. People are late sometimes. Alarm clocks fail, traffic stalls, mornings go wrong. But as the hours passed and his seat remained empty, a quiet discomfort settled in. A shape had gone missing from the daily pattern, and the silence it left behind was louder than expected. When authorities began to investigate, they hit an obstacle more chilling than absence itself. No one remembered his name. Not the barista who served him each morning, not the co-workers at the office where his chair now sat still, not even the woman who lived in his apartment, the one who claimed to be his wife. "I know his face," she said, "but I can't recall what we called him." Records showed no recent photos, no calls made, no messages sent, bank accounts untouched, ID expired. Surveillance cameras from that day captured the train's arrival, the movement of the crowd, but not him. It was as if the city had swallowed him whole and erased the memory. The neighbors remembered a friendly man, quiet, kept to himself, walked his dog twice a day. But when asked for more, their answers dissolved into vague impressions, unfinished thoughts. He was reliable, someone said. Maybe a teacher or an accountant? I don't really know. Then, days later, a notebook was found near track 17, bound in navy cloth, with a single name written on the first page. A name that didn't match any official document, but that felt strangely familiar to someone, as if whispered in a dream they couldn't quite remember. What happens when a person disappears? And memory follows, when a life vanishes not with a cry, but with a sigh that no one hears. This is the story of the man who vanished from a train platform and from everyone's mind. He was always there, they said. The staff at the cafe remembered his usual order, black coffee, no sugar, but none could describe his face. One barista hesitated, pointing vaguely toward a table near the window. He sat there. "I think," she murmured, uncertain. The man had become an outline in people's minds, like a shadow at the edge of a photograph, present but unshaped. Investigators canvassed the neighborhood, hoping to find someone who knew more. The building superintendent recalled fixing a leak in his apartment 3 months prior, yet couldn't recall the man opening the door. "It was ajar when I arrived," he said. "He must have been inside, but I don't remember seeing him." Even the mail carrier said something unsettling, that he never saw the man, only the mailbox being emptied. Inside the apartment, everything was in order, immaculate. The bed made, dishes clean, calendar marked to the day of his disappearance. But the name on the lease had faded ink. The document looked authentic, but when entered into the system, it led nowhere. No birth record, no social security trace, no history, just a signature, illegible. His wife, if that's what she truly was, sat on the edge of their shared bed with a look of profound confusion. "We've lived here for 4 years," she said softly. "I know we did. I have memories, moments, dinners, conversations, but when I try to picture him in them, he's always looking away." She clutched a photograph from the nightstand. In it, she smiled beside a man whose face was obscured by glare, the only image she had of them together. At work, things were no clearer. His desk stood untouched, pens aligned, files stacked, a coffee mug with no name. Colleagues assumed he worked in accounting, maybe IT. No one remembered actually being hired with him. One woman whispered, "I just thought he'd always been here, like the furniture." The deeper the search went, the more it felt like chasing smoke. A man who had daily routines, visible patterns, a home, a life, yet no anchors, no weight. no past. As if someone, or something, had meticulously erased him not only from records, but from memory. But then came a small discovery. Behind a drawer in the hallway table, hidden under yellowing papers, was a card, blank on one side. On the other, a time 6:12 a.m., and a word written in trembling script, return. The card became a turning point. Return. A simple word, yet it pulsed with ambiguity. Return where? Return to what? Investigators began to trace every possible meaning, every potential connection. They returned to the station, the exact spot where he had stood for countless mornings. And there, unnoticed for days, lay another object, a small metal key wedged between the platform tiles, rusted but clearly placed. Forensics found no prints, no fibers, just a key with a faint engraving, 617B. That number didn't match any locker in the station. It didn't correspond to a postal box or office room, but someone remembered a storage facility near the old railway yard, long shut down. And though the address was faded from most directories, a faded map on the wall of a forgotten hallway in the station pointed the way. The building stood abandoned, windows boarded, signs worn to illegibility, but the key fit. A creaking door opened into dust and silence. Inside, boxes, some untouched for years, others recently disturbed. One in particular bore a date, handwritten in red ink, the same day the man disappeared. Inside it, a dark blue notebook, identical to the one found near track 17. This notebook was different. Its pages were filled edge to edge. Lines of timestamps, 612, 612, 612, repeated like a mantra. Between them, fragmented phrases, watch the line, wait at the mark, don't speak to them. Some words were crossed out violently, others underlined. One page was completely blackened, as if obscuring something too dangerous to read. A psychologist consulted on the case described the writing as compulsive, possibly the product of severe dissociation or some form of self-hypnosis. It's like he was trying to anchor himself, she said, to remember something that kept slipping away. The more they read, the more the notebook seemed like blueprints of a vanishing mind, a mind both desperate to stay and preparing to leave. But leave what? A life, a place, a world. Then, tucked inside the back cover, a newspaper clipping, yellowed and brittle, dated 23 years ago. Local man missing after routine commute. The article described a disappearance nearly identical to the current case. Same time, same train, same station. The only difference that the man's name, a name none of them had ever seen before, yet somehow felt eerily familiar. The photo was grainy, out of focus, but there he was. The same coat, the same posture, the same third window from the left. The discovery of the old newspaper clipping sent a chill through the team. 23 years apart, yet the details aligned with unsettling precision. Same time of day, same train line, same absence of witnesses. And now 2 notebooks, separated by decades, yet eerily alike in handwriting, content and tone. It was no longer a simple case of a man who vanished. It was a pattern. Investigators traced the article's origins, reaching out to the now retired journalist who had written it. Her memory was hazy, but one thing stood out. She had received an anonymous letter before publishing the piece. It said not to look too deep, she recalled. That sometimes people disappear because the world forgets them, on purpose. She had dismissed it then as poetic nonsense, but now it read like a warning. In both cases, when families were interviewed, the stories collapsed. The wife of the first man had similar symptoms, vivid dreams fading upon waking, photos that seemed incomplete, memories with gaps too large to ignore. A shared psychological pattern emerged, emotional connection with an invisible presence. It was as if the mind had built a life around someone that was never fully there. Back at the apartment, the current woman's behavior grew more erratic. She began speaking of dreams in which he stood on the platform, unmoving, staring at a clock that never advanced. In one dream, she tried to call out his name, but found she didn't know it. "I screamed," she said, but it was like the sound stopped before reaching him. Experts debated possibilities, shared delusion, psychological contagion, false memory syndromes. But none could explain the notebooks, or the key, or the perfectly aligned timelines. A forensic linguist compared the handwriting between both notebooks and issued a baffling report. The styles matched not just in structure, but in pressure, rhythm, and flow, as if written by the same hand across decades. Then came another piece of the puzzle. An elderly man, after watching a local news report, came forward. He claimed to have seen the same figure, grey coat, leather briefcase, boarding a train over and over again, year after year. Always alone, he said. Always vanishing into the third car. Was it the same person, or a series of men repeating the same role? The deeper the case went, the more it resembled a cycle, a loop in time, anchored to a single moment that no one could escape. And yet, someone had to be pulling the strings, or remembering enough to keep it going. By now, the team had stopped asking where he had gone. The question had changed. Had he ever truly been here? The investigation took on a more metaphysical weight. Files were reopened not in search of facts, but of echoes, traces of repetition, symmetry, or distortion. A specialist in cognitive memory was brought in, not to examine witnesses, but to examine how memory itself could be manipulated. His theory was unsettling. What if he exists only as long as someone remembers him, and the moment that memory falters, he slips away? With that idea in mind, they revisited the platform, not during the day, but precisely at 6:12 a.m. The same conductor, now aware of the case, agreed to delay the train briefly. As the cold air settled, silence overtook the platform, and for a moment, there it was, a flicker, a figure at the far end, unmoving, then gone. No one else saw it, but the camera this time caught a glitch in the footage. One frame, just one, captured the outline of a man, blurred at the edges as if resisting focus. They replayed the clip dozens of times. Each time, the image degraded slightly, like a memory fading with repetition. The idea of digital decay mirrored something more human, the way we forget, the way silence replaces stories, the way absence fills the space where a name should be. Soon after, another item surfaced. A transit worker clearing out old storage lockers found a ticket stub dated exactly 1 year in the future. Same time, same station, same destination. On the back, scribbled hastily, "Do not wait. It's already happening." The paper was fresh, untouched by time. The ink hadn't faded. How had it gotten there? Who had written it? Public interest in the case had begun to grow, but with it came distortion. Online forums speculated wildly. Time traveler, psychological experiment, collective hallucination. But for the team investigating, it wasn't about theories anymore. It was about something simpler, more intimate. A man who vanished, and no one knew how to hold on to his name. One member of the team, unable to sleep, began revisiting old commuter logs. There, buried in a scanned ledger from 5 years prior, she found it. A sign-in name, handwritten beside a time, 6:12. The name was smudged, almost unreadable, but it matched the one in the notebook, and once again, just as recognition began to form, it slipped away. She stared at the ledger for hours, trying to hold on to the name, saying it aloud, writing it down. But each time, it seemed to fade from her mind like a dream upon waking. Frustrated, she recorded a voice memo. "I just saw it. I knew it. It started with an M, or maybe an R." She played it back minutes later, and the audio was blank. Silence. As if her own device had forgotten what she said. She wasn't the only one. Others on the team began to report similar experiences, sudden forgetfulness, sentences they couldn't finish, moments of disorientation. Some joked that the case was getting into their heads. Others stopped laughing. It was no longer about the man who disappeared. It was about what his disappearance was doing to them. In a final attempt to map the mystery, they turned their attention to the coordinates found in the notebook, not the ones that led to the storage facility, but a second set, written in the margins on a torn page. They led to the outskirts of town, to an abandoned signal post near a stretch of unused tracks. The kind of place you'd only find if you were looking for nothing in particular. When they arrived, they found the post intact but rusted. Inside, an old metal filing cabinet still locked. With some effort, they forced it open. Folders lined the inside, most too damp to read, but one stood out. Its label, Train 612, Irregular Manifest. The file contained a log of passengers, with most names blacked out. But one line was different. Blank space, then a note in pencil. Unregistered presence. Observed multiple cycles. Avoid contact. Avoid contact. The weight of the phrase lingered in the room. Who had written it? When? And what did they mean by multiple cycles? The sense of repetition that had haunted the case now took on a darker tone, as if someone somewhere had been observing this pattern for longer than anyone imagined. They left the post shaken. The silence around the tracks felt heavier now, not just abandoned, but guarded by forgetfulness itself, as if some truths were designed not to be remembered. Back in the city, the woman who claimed to be his wife made one final revelation. She opened an old jewelry box and pulled out a ring. Simple, plain. Inside the band, a single word was engraved, but no matter how many times she read it, she couldn't say what it meant, only that it didn't feel like his name. It felt like a warning. From that point forward, the case ceased to feel like an investigation. It became a descent into questions no one could phrase, into answers that unraveled the moment they seemed whole. The team met in a quiet room, surrounded by maps, logs, timelines, voice memos, all connected by red string and deepening silence. Every lead, every artifact, every recollection shared the same flaw. The closer they looked, the more uncertain it became whether they were discovering something or creating it. Then came the unexpected breakthrough. A retired train conductor, now living far from the city, contacted them after reading about the incident online. He had worked the 612 route for over 20 years. "I remember a man," he said slowly. "Always third window, never spoke, but something about him. He was the reason I stopped. One day he looked at me, really looked, and I felt like I'd seen him before, years ago, but I was younger then." When asked for details, the man paused. "The thing is," he whispered, "I think I was younger then, but the train was the same. Same scratches on the door, same ad in the window, same coffee stain on seat 12C. It was the same morning." He couldn't explain it, couldn't prove it, but he remembered the moment so vividly it made the hairs on his arms stand. He had written about it in his journal tucked away in a drawer, and there, in faded ink, was a sketch. The figure in the window, grey coat, downcast eyes. A note beside it, "He's waiting for something or someone." But what was he waiting for? In the following days, the train conductor's testimony haunted the team. They began analyzing the station itself, architectural records, blueprints, old maintenance logs. One detail stood out. The platform had once been longer. A section had been decommissioned decades earlier and sealed off. Most assumed it had been demolished. It hadn't. They requested access. Flashlights lit the darkness as they stepped into the forgotten section. Dust choked the air. The walls bore faded paint and crumbling posters from decades ago. And then, one team member found it. A bench untouched. A coffee cup still resting on the ground beneath it. And beside it, a paper preserved by luck and shadow. It read only, "I never left. You just stopped seeing me." And somewhere behind them, something echoed. A soft metallic sound, like the creak of a door that hadn't opened in years, or perhaps one that never fully closed. They froze. The echo faded quickly, but its presence lingered like breath on glass. No one spoke. The atmosphere in that sealed part of the platform felt thick, unreal, as though the very air resisted being disturbed. The bench, the note, the cup, Everything looked as if it had been waiting for someone to return or to remember. One of the investigators picked up the cup. It was cold, of course, but still intact. On the rim, a faint red mark. Not lipstick, not ink. A stain that seemed old and new at once. Something about it triggered a flood of sensation she couldn't explain, like remembering a word just before it vanishes again. They photographed everything, bagged the paper, but the longer they stayed, the harder it was to focus. Memories blurred, time lost shape. One member checked their phone, 6:12 a.m., but outside it was midday. Another's watch had stopped altogether. Back in the light, nothing they had collected made sense. The note had no handwriting match. The cup bore no fingerprints. The photos came out hazy, each one slightly misaligned, as if the camera had trembled, though no one recalled shaking. And the strangest thing, none of them could remember walking out. One moment, they were inside. The next, they were standing outside the gates. No memory of closing the door, no memory of locking it behind them. That night, dreams came, vivid, repetitive, always the station, always the same bench, always a train that never arrived. The woman who'd found the paper woke up at exactly 6:12 a.m. Her apartment was silent, but on the hallway floor, just beneath her door, was another note, no envelope, just a single sentence, typed, "You saw me." That means it begins again. The message was turned over to the team. Fingerprints, none. Paper standard stock, ink fresh, but it hadn't been sent. No one saw anyone approach the building, no footage showed a visitor, and yet it was there. Theories turned inward. Was this man some kind of fragment, a projection born of grief, routine, and urban loneliness? Was he real or a mirror, showing people what they'd forgotten to see in themselves? But then came the final complication. Another disappearance, not just similar, identical. Another man, same route, same attire, same empty desk, and once again, no one remembered his name. The difference this time, the new man's notebook had a second name written inside, a name that didn't belong to him. It belonged to the first man. This discovery shattered any illusion that the pattern had ended. The name had returned, not as a memory, but as a signature, clear, deliberate, unmistakable. And yet, no one could say it aloud. Investigators tried. Each time, the name seemed to slip from the tongue, as if language itself refused to hold it. Only in writing did it remain, staring back like a word in a language no one could speak. The second disappearance followed the same rhythm. Same absence of witnesses, same erasure from records, but this time the team was watching. Cameras were placed throughout the station, backups created, devices isolated from external networks. They monitored everything, every day, without fail. And still, he vanished. One moment walking onto the platform, the next gone. No one turned, no one noticed. The train arrived, the doors opened, but his reflection never passed across the glass. The footage was intact, no glitches, no static. But reviewing frame by frame revealed something else. At 6:12 a.m., for precisely 1 second, a shadow passed over the platform. A distortion, not quite a figure, not quite a shape, just absence. Then, in the following days, a disturbing trend emerged. People connected to the case began forgetting details. An investigator forgot where she parked her car and where she lived. A technician forgot the passwords he'd used for 10 years. A journalist reviewing her notes found entire paragraphs missing. It was spreading. And then the files began to change, documents rewritten, photos refiled under new dates, audio recordings turning to static. Even the original blue notebook, the one found at track 17, now contained an extra page. But no one remembered being there. On it, a message in the same uneven handwriting, "You remembered too much." This wasn't just about one man. It was about erosion. The erosion of identity, of time, of place. As if reality had thresholds, and once crossed, the world quietly took things back. And just when it seemed nothing more could shift, the station itself changed. A new schedule appeared, printed and mounted at the platform entrance. A train now departing daily at 6:12 a.m. with no listed destination. The name of the commuter was printed next to it, bold, alone, as if he were the only passenger, as if he had always been. But no one recognized the name. No one except the woman who once called him her husband, who now stood before the sign, whispering a word she didn't understand, and crying without knowing why. She stood there for minutes, maybe longer, watching the schedule, lips moving with a name she couldn't hold on to. Around her, the station moved on. Footsteps, announcements, the soft hush of arrivals and departures. But for her, time had collapsed. It was 6:12 a.m. again. Though her watch disagreed, the world disagreed. Only her heart kept time now. The final thread unraveled when she returned home and found the apartment changed, furniture slightly rearranged, books she didn't remember reading, photos in frames that no longer held her. And in the center of the room, on the dining table where he used to sit, a briefcase, his, but not dusty, not aged, as if it had been placed there moments before. Inside, a map, not of the city, not even of a place, a diagram, loops and arrows, layered tracks and mirrored numbers. At the center, a circled time, 6:12, again and again. In the corner, a phrase she had never seen before. When the last one remembers, the door will open. She didn't know what it meant, but she knew what it felt like. An ending, or perhaps a choice. And so she returned, one final time, to the station, to the platform, alone. The train approached, empty. She didn't board, she simply watched. And in the reflection of the window, just behind her, was his face. For the first time, clear, still, real. But when she turned, he was gone. And yet, she felt no fear, only peace. The next morning, the schedule changed again. The 6:12 departure was gone, erased as though it had never existed. No files, no mention, not even in backup drives. Only those who had chased the story remembered, and even they couldn't be sure. No trace of him was ever found again. No footage, no name, no voice. But sometimes, when the station is quiet just before dawn, a single figure is said to appear at the far end of the platform, waiting, not to leave, but to be remembered. If this story stayed with you, even after the screen fades to black, don't forget to subscribe for more mysteries like this one. And tell us, have you ever met someone who seemed to disappear from memory, as if they were never real? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because sometimes remembering is all that keeps something from vanishing entirely.